Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Is it going to Wirecast? Add a new link. Okay, I can't see the Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome. We're glad that you're joining me here today for this Ableton Live course. We're gonna dive in deep into all things Ableton Live, and we're gonna get started here in about 5 minutes. So sorry about the technical difficulties there. We moved the link to a different place. We ran into a little snag with the live streaming, but we should be good now. We're gonna wait 5 minutes for everybody to join us, and then we're gonna get started. So get ready. See you soon. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome. Glad you're here. My name is Matt McCoy. I'm the founder of Loop Community, and I'm an Ableton certified trainer, and I'm passionate about teaching worship leaders how to use Ableton Live in worship. Sorry about that little technical glitch we had there. If that happens again, just so you know, we are going to record this and we'll send out a link and you'll be able to watch it at any time later. So no worries about that. We've got a ton of stuff we're going to dive into today. So we're going to get started. We're going to dive into Ableton Live pretty deep. We're going to start with just beginner. We're going to start with what do you need to know to actually get Ableton Live going at your church to use it in worship. I've been using it since 2002. It was like Ableton Live version 2, I believe, and now it's on Ableton Live 10. And so I've been using it for a while, and it's a powerful software for worship leaders. There is so much you can do with it. And so I always like to say you can get as geeky and nerdy with the software as you want. And today we're going to do that. So we're going to start beginner. We're going to catch everybody up to what you need to know to actually get going with this. But then we're going to get a little deeper. And we're going to talk about automating lyrics in ProPresenter. We're going to talk about customizing tracks, creating your own click tracks. So the first hour or so is going to be spent in beginner level, and then we're going to take some questions. So at the end of that first 50 minutes or so, I'm going to go to YouTube chat and we're going to take questions. And then the next 50 minutes are going to be diving in deep into arrangement view and building a set there, all right? And we'll take another set of questions at the end there. But real quick, I'd just like to see who's all watching. So if you're watching, go ahead and just type in your name, where you're from. Seth, what's up? Corey, Carlos, David Andrews, Michael Bond, Michelle, welcome. Glad you guys are here. Seth McConkey, so good to have you, man. Michael. All right, so we're going to try to make this just really interactive, okay? So just be typing in the chat box any questions, any comments you have, and we're gonna just dive right in. So I hope you have pen and paper ready, your notepad, because we're gonna go in deep and we're gonna go in fast, all right? So first thing we're gonna look at is ableton.com, all right? So when you're at ableton.com, this is where you can get your copy of Live. So quick tip, Ableton is the name of the company, Live is the name of the software that Ableton makes. So Ableton Live. It comes in 3 different versions: intro, standard, and suite. All of these versions work on both Mac and PC. And what I would say is that if you're just getting started with Live, all you need is the intro version. Intro is going to give you just about everything you need. Almost everything we're doing today, you'll be able to do in the intro version. If you want to start getting a little bit more geeky and crazy, maybe recording your own tracks, doing tons of outputs, tons of tracks, then you're going to want standard or suite. If you're recording music, you're going to definitely want suite. But here's the thing, you can always upgrade later. So if you get intro and then you're like, oh, I need more, then you can always upgrade to standard. But I would recommend that you start with the intro version. And so today, let's go and just dive in. I actually have Live 10 Suite. And this is what it looks like when you first launch Ableton Live, all right? Now, I remember when I first started leading worship and someone showed me Ableton Live, it totally freaked me out. Because I was like, what in the world? This looks like, you know, Mission Control Center or something. And it can seem very intimidating, but it's actually a lot easier than it looks. So what we're going to do is the very, very first thing you want to do is kind of configure some settings in Live. We're going to go to Live Preferences, and under Record, Warp, and Launch, there's a setting here that says Auto Warp Long Samples. You want to make sure that's turned off. That's the first thing we tell people to do when they first install a copy of Ableton Live. And I will explain later why that needed to be off. But it's going to affect tempo and tempo and key changing. So turn that off. Now Ableton Live has 2 different views. The view that we're looking at right now is called Session View, and it kind of looks like this Microsoft Excel grid, right, where you've got audio tracks, and then you have these lines going across. The other view that Ableton Live has is called Arrangement View. And if you hit the Tab key, it'll take you to Arrangement View, or you can also press the little button in the top right corner, and this will take you to Arrangement View. Arrangement View looks more like your standard music software, where you've got your tracks here. This could be drums, bass, electric, acoustic, and then your tracks run down a timeline from left to right. If you're familiar with GarageBand, Pro Tools, Logic, then you'll probably be familiar with that kind of view. So we're going to do, what's really cool about Ableton Live is there's no wrong way to do something. There's a million ways to do the same thing, and that's actually really awesome. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you both views. I'm going to show you how to build a set in Session View, the Microsoft Excel looking one, and I'm going to show you how to build a set in Arrangement View, and then I'll kind of give you the pros and cons of each view, and then it'll be up to you to decide what you want to use. But there's no wrong way to do this. There's so much you can do with Ableton Live, but I think that when you're learning, the best way to learn is to start in Session View. So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes diving into Session View. So let's do that now. I'm going to hit the Tab key, and that brought me back over to Session View. And we're going to just build a worship set together from scratch. And let's just pretend I'm leading worship this Sunday, and I need to put a set together. When you first open up Live, it's going to give you all of these tracks here. I'm going to delete these by just clicking on the top of the track and hitting the Delete key. And we're going to just start with one track. Also, this reverb and delay, we don't need those, so you can hide those by clicking the Send and Return buttons down here in the bottom right corner. Now you'll notice that this view is made up of tracks, which are these vertical columns, and it's also made up of what are called scenes, and these are the horizontal lines that go across. So you'll notice over here I have my master. This is my master fader, and I have 8 numbers here, 8 rows. What you want to do is think of a scene as a song. So I have 8 songs in my set list right now. I could always add more by going to Create, Insert Scene, or Command-I for those of you who like keyboard shortcuts. Let me just hit the Delete key. We're going to do 3 songs in our set because we have so much to do today, so we're not going to spend a ton of time building a super long set. We have 3 songs in our set. Now on the left-hand side of the screen, all right, this is called Live's file browser, this whole section here. And this is a way to access files on your computer and also to access different sounds inside of Ableton Live. So if you're going to be making your own music, you would use this section a lot. This is where you could find pad sounds. This is where you could find drum sounds, right? If you want to find audio effects, you can find those here, like reverb, delays. You can throw these on every channel. I could teach a whole other 2-hour course on just how to record and make your own tracks, like produce your own music. And if you're doing that, then the categories section would be for you. But today we're going to be using Live to make or run tracks live. So we're going to use this section down here, and it's called Places. And Places is a way to access files on your computer, kind of like a shortcut. So for example, you could click Add Folder, and I could find any folder on my computer, and let's just say I wanted to make a shortcut to my iTunes library for some reason. I can click Open, and it just made a shortcut for me to my iTunes folder. So I have a shortcut on my computer already created that goes to my worship songs. And it's a folder on my computer where I store all of my audio tracks that I download from Loop Community. So let's look at that just for a second. Loopcommunity.com is a place where you can go to download tracks for any song. So let's just say you want a track for Reckless Love. You can click on Reckless Love, and you can go to multi-track file download and purchase Reckless Love tracks. And what you're going to get when you purchase this is a zip file, and inside that zip file it's going to have a collection of WAV files. Let me show you now. So let's just say our first song, all right, is going to be Open Up the Heavens. So this is a track I just purchased from Loop Community, right? It gives me a folder with the song title, the tempo of the song, the key of the song, and you'll notice that inside there I have a WAV file for every instrument. All right, I can click on it to, preview it. It'll start playing in a second. At the end of the file it says what that file is. So this is the acoustic track. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start bringing these in. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on my first song. I'm going to rename this to Open Up the Heavens. Okay, that's my first song. And my first track, I'm going to rename this and call this band cues. Band cues are that little voice that talks me through the song. Verse, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to click and drag the cue file here. If you press play, you can kind of listen to it.
Intro, 2,
that's
3,
the cue.
4.
So I'm going to reserve this track here just for band cues. Now, let's go ahead and bring in some of the other instruments. I can bring them in one at a time by just dragging them like this. And notice it's going to create a new track for me. Or I can do them all at once by holding the Command key to select all of these. And then drag. Whoop, I did not hold Command the whole time. You can also use Shift to select it all like that. All right? Now if you hold Command, notice how right now it's trying to drop them in vertically. We don't want that to happen. So I'm going to hold Command to drop those in horizontally. All right? Now there's a play button on every single audio file here. You don't want to press play on all these.
Intro, 2,
because
3,
if you do,
4.
all the audio files are going to start playing, but you'll notice they're way out of time. So instead, what you want to do is you want to use the play button that's actually on the song title. All right? When I press this play button, or as Ableton would call it, launch button, it's going to launch or play all of these audio files
2,
at the same
3,
time.
4.
All right? So now they're all playing in time together. Now let's go ahead and just do another song, all right? I'm going to, let's just rename this one to Lion and the Lamb. And I'm going to open up Lion and the Lamb, and let's bring in the cues here. And then let's bring in everything else. Now, obviously, in a real-life situation here, I would only bring in the tracks that I need for that weekend. So if I had a drummer, I wouldn't bring the drum track in. I would only, you know, and if I was playing acoustic guitar, I wouldn't bring the acoustic track in. Let's press play on that and see what that sounds like. All right, the song's about to play.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
Cool. All right, in our third song, I'm going to right-click, rename, and we're going to call this Revelation Song. And we don't have tracks for this one, but we still want to play to a click. So what I'm going to do too really quickly is just show you that you can color coordinate some things. See how these are all different colors? I'm going to hold Shift and right-click, and I'm going to make the track titles all white. I feel like it makes it easier to see. So I'm going to change Open Up the Heavens. We're going to make this red, and we'll make Lion and the Lamb green. All right. I feel like it just makes visually it easier to see. You can also change the color of this over here. So now I can look at it. I'm like, all right, yeah, I see. Yeah, we got kind of a Christmas theme going, right? Except for the orange. Okay, I'm going to close out the little I/O button down here to make some more room. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so I've added band cues. I have my different songs here. Now I can reorder these by just dragging them around like that. If I wanted to put Revelation Song first, I can reorder my set list by just dragging. So let's put Open Up the Heavens first, and then Lion and the Lamb. Now here's the other thing you want to, I'm going to show you, is down here, this is like the mixer. I'm going to press play and Open Up the Heavens. Down here you'll notice that these buttons,
3, 4.
These act as mute buttons. So I could mute the tracks by doing that. I can solo tracks by just doing this. There's the drums. I can turn things down by using these volume knobs.
2, 3, 4.
But here's the thing though, you don't actually want to do that. And you're like, well, why did you just show me that? Well, the reason you don't want to do that is because if I adjust the volume on these tracks like this, because maybe the Open Up the Heavens guitar was too loud, the problem is that these controls down here will affect Lion and the Lamb as well. Because Lion and the Lamb is also in the same track columns, right? So you don't want to
4.
use these, because now, see, I missed those instruments. So let me go and reset that all back to default. You can just click on a control and hit the delete key. That's a little tip, and it resets everything back to default. Here's what you want to do instead. If you want to mute a track, so let's just say I want to mute this bass, I can right-click and go to deactivate clip. And it's going to mute or deactivate that individual instrument, all right? Let's go ahead and reactivate it. And I'm going to show you something else. Let's just say you want to control the volume.
2, 3, 4.
So for example, just say that acoustic guitar is too loud or too quiet. If you click on it, or double click on it, this is going to bring up the clip overview window. And it shows you the entire clip of that acoustic guitar. There's a fader here that lets me adjust the gain for that instrument. So I can turn it up, or I can turn it down, you know, depending on what I need. So you'll find that this is handy, and do that instead of adjusting it here, because you don't want to adjust line and the lamb as well. All right? Now you'll find this very handy if, for some reason, let's look at line and the lamb. Let's just say for some reason the whole song just seems really quiet or too loud. Well, you can use that trick to adjust the volume of everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to select all of the green clips for line and the lamb. And actually, I'm going to press play before I do that, because I'd like to do this while it's playing. Hold Shift, select everything, and down here I can adjust the volume of all of line and the lamb. I could bring it down. I could boost it. I try to get it so that my tracks are right around here. I'm looking at the master fader. I don't want it to be in the red, like that, because that would be clipping. I want it to be just below it. Now I do this for every single one of my songs, so that way the output for the volume of every single song is the same level. That will make your sound guy very happy. Okay, so now let's talk about the click first of all. So we don't have a metronome, and this is a very important part of playing with tracks, is you have to have a metronome. That way your band can actually stay in time. All right. So what we're going to do is, over in the top left corner of the screen, this is Ableton's Metronome Control Center. All right. You can tap a tempo in like this. You can type a tempo in. This is your time signature, so we're at 4/4. And this button turns your metronome on and off. So let's go ahead and turn it on. And let's press play or launch. The metronome, you can hear it there.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
However, you're probably noticing that it's not in time with the tracks. And that is because the metronome is playing at 110 BPM, but the song Open Up the Heavens is at 99 BPM. All right, I know that because I look at the file name. So what we have to do is we have to tell Ableton, when we play Open Up the Heavens, change the metronome of change the metronome in Ableton Live to the tempo of Open Up the Heavens. So I'm going to right click and go to Open Up the Heavens, go to Edit Launch Tempo. I'm going to type in 99. Now notice when I press play, my metronome automatically changed to 99, and my metronome's in time with the song. If you need to adjust the volume of your metronome, it's down here, this little headphone knob. So we can turn that up, turn that down. Now you also need to do that for your second song, because if I just press play on the Line of the Lamb, it's going to stay at what I last told it to do, which is 99. So we need to adjust Line in the Lamb. Now again, for any of you keyboard shortcut people, you could just do this by typing it in at the beginning. So I could type in Lion in the Lamb, semicolon, 90 BPM. As long as you have 90 BPM in there, it'll read it. And there we go. It changed the tempo. Let's do the same thing for Revelation Song. Let's do the Edit Launch Tempo one this time. We're going to do this at 76 BPM. Now you can also change the time signature. Go to right click and go to Edit Launch Time Signature. And I can type in, you know, I want to do this at 2/8. So it sounds like this. And then let's just say I want Line in the Lamb to be at 4/4. And Open Up the Heavens to be, I don't know, just say we want it to be at 4/8. Just to show you how you can change. So now it's launching a tempo and a time signature. Cool. Now let's go to Revelation song. All right. So when I go to Revelation song, it launches that song with that click, and that's great. It's very, very important that you get your band onto a metronome. Your band will sound better just by playing to a click, I promise you. So if you don't take anything from this whole thing, even if you don't use any tracks, just use Ableton Live to make a set list of metronomes, and your band is going to sound great. Okay, so now let's keep moving. So we've got a set list, we've set our tempos, our clicks. Now what happens if we get into a song and we're like, you know what? The song is too slow, or we need to change the key of the song. Well, we're going to accomplish this in Ableton Live by using something called warping. That sounds like some Star Wars or Star Trek kind of thing, but here's the thing is, warping, Ableton Live is really good at, because Ableton is actually built for DJs. So if you've ever heard a remix where you've got like a Taylor Swift song and a Justin Bieber song or something, and they're at two totally different keys and tempos, but somehow someone's remixed it so they sound the same, they're using warping in Ableton Live, and it's really good at this. And it's a way of time stretching audio without the audio losing its quality, which is important, or its timing, so the tracks all stay in time together. Now let me show you how to warp, because this is probably one of our #1 support requests that we get. Because if you don't follow these steps specifically, you will end up with kind of a mess on your hands, all right? So let's look at this now. This is also why you wanted to make sure in your settings, Record Warp Launch, Auto Warp Long Samples is turned off. We want this off because we're actually wanting to do it manually. If we would have left that on, Ableton would have automatically warped everything before we could even get to it. So here's what we do for warping. I'm going to look at Open Up the Heavens, all right? And what we're going to do, I'm going to show you what warping actually does. So I'm going to find a track. Let's use this one. I'm going to zoom in so you can see all those transients. And there's a button here that says warp. I'm going to press warp. And you'll notice that what it did is Ableton analyzed the audio, and wherever it found a downbeat, it added something called a warp marker. All right? So there's a bunch of warp markers in here now. And now that it knows where the downbeats are, it knows how to change the tempo within Ableton Live so that it actually stays in time. So I just warped the bass track, but we actually want to warp everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first things first, you want to make sure that your tempo up here is set to the original tempo. So it's set to 99, which is good. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to select all these clips. I'm going to press the warp button. Now every single one of those clips now is warped. And the way I know it's warped correctly is when you click on a clip and you look down here, there's a little box here that says Segment BPM. You want this box here to always say the original tempo. If this box does not say the original tempo, that means you did not warp correctly. It means that probably what happened is this was set to the wrong tempo before you hit the warp button. So we're good, because this says 99, and that's the original. Let me show you what this did. So now that it's warped,
Intro,
check this out. I can actually, while it's playing, adjust the tempo in the tempo box, and I could do it as fast or slow as I want. And what's amazing is that Ableton Live keeps all those tracks in time with each other, which is pretty awesome.
3, 4.
Right? So now that it's warped, I could always say over here to my launch tempo, all right, yeah, I always want to do Open Up the Heavens at 95. And now it'll launch at 95.
Intro, 2, 3,
all right.
4.
So let's go through the steps again for Lion and the Lamb. Again, before I warp Lion and the Lamb, I want to make sure that my tempo up here says the original tempo, because that's what it's going to warp it at. So let's go ahead and type in 90, press enter. And now let's go ahead and hold shift and select all of line in the lamb and press warp. Let's go ahead and press play. We're warped correctly because I see 90 in this segment BPM box. I could speed this up.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Now here's the other cool thing. With warping, you can also change the key of your song. So I'm going to select everything. And there's a knob down here called transpose. And I can actually transpose in half steps. So I just went down 2 half steps. Let's just say I want to go down another one. And I'm actually just using my arrow keys on my computer to do this. So this is a great way to change the key of a track that you're doing, all right?
3, 4.
I also want to make sure that complex is turned on. Now this is something that only standard and sweet will have, but complex sounds better. This still works in intro, and that's not a big deal. It would probably be on beats, and you probably can barely hear the difference. Let me go and change it and see if you can hear it. Ready? It's very subtle, but complex is a lot smoother in how it does this.
Turn around. 2, 3,
So
4.
that's how you can change the key and the tempo of a track. Now here's the thing is, I probably wouldn't change the key of a track that doesn't need to be changed. And what I mean by that is like the drum track. Probably don't transpose the drum track because you don't need to. Just transpose the tracks that need to be transposed. And your tracks will actually end up sounding a lot better by doing it that way, all right? Now another little quick thing that I didn't go into deep detail on just because we don't have a ton of time is you could get really organized with this stuff. So I could have renamed all of these track titles to, this could be acoustics, this could be bass, this could be drums, right? And then I could put, when I'm bringing my songs in, I can put the acoustics in this column or this track, all the bass guitars in this track, all the drums in this track. I didn't do that though just because it takes some more time. But if you are OCD like I am, like I would actually, if I had time here, I would actually really want to make all my tracks be the same. Because that way I know, hey, all my bass guitars are really loud. Then I could just turn them all down right here and it would actually affect all my bass guitars. Now, of course, I would only want to do that if I had already preset the volumes of my clips to all be the same, right? So, but you can get really organized with this. You can also do groups. So if I had a bunch of guitars here, I could just highlight these tracks here and right-click and go to Group Tracks. And I can make a group called, Guitars. And I can condense that down. And it's kind of a way to just be really organized. You can really go to town on this to customize these sessions to, fit for what works for you organizationally. Okay, so we changed key, we changed tempo of tracks. We've set up clicks on all of our songs. Now let's talk about controlling these tracks, all right? MIDI control. How do we actually control these tracks? Well, you could do what I was doing here by just pressing, with your mouse on the launch buttons. And that would be fine. Maybe if you put your computer back by your drummer or your keyboard player, they could just, use the mouse to control the tracks. Well, what you could do is also set up key commands, and this just takes a second to do, and I'm going to show you now. In the right-hand side of the screen, all right, there's a button that says key. I'm going to turn key on. And anything that you see that turns orange can be assigned to a key on my computer keyboard. So let's go ahead and Open Up the Heavens, the 1 key on my keyboard, Lion and the Lamb, the 2, and Revelation Song 3. Let's go ahead and leave key mode. I'm going to press 1. And it starts song
Intro
1.
2, 3,
Now I can press
4.
the space bar. It'll stop my tracks. I can press 2. It starts song 2 in my set. I can press the space bar, press 3, and it'll start song 3. Now, notice that it's not playing. This is a little trick. The reason it's not playing is because Ableton's like, you're trying to play Revelation song, but there's nothing for me to actually play because there's no clips here. So what I like doing is I go to create and insert MIDI track, and I'll drag it over to the beginning. I'm going to right click and go to click only. I'm going to just rename it to click only. And I'm just going to double click here to make a blank MIDI clip. And now we kind of tricked Ableton. Now it has something to play. It's just playing a blank MIDI clip. But at least it played Revelation song for me. So that's how you could use keyboard mappings to map anything that you see that turned orange on this screen. All right. A very quick way to erase any mappings, this is a trick. This is a pro tip. You ready? If you're in keyboard mapping on the left-hand side of the screen, you can highlight all of these keyboard mappings and press the delete key. That will save you a lot of time because I've seen a lot of guys go through each individual mapping here and just hit delete, delete, when really you can just highlight here and hit delete, and it does them all at once. All right? Now let's talk about MIDI mapping. I'm going to show you how you could use an external controller to control your tracks. So if you're like me, you're a guitar, like I play acoustic guitar when I lead worship. And I also like to have the control of the tracks, meaning I don't really like having someone else in my band do it because, you know, maybe in between a song I want to say something. And so I don't want the drummer to start the track when I'm actually trying to talk or say something. So I like to keep control of the tracks of when I'm going to start and stop a song. And that's exactly why we developed this controller. And this is called the Looptimus foot controller. And it is designed specifically for worship leaders who want to run their own tracks using their feet. All right, I'm going to be using my hands today because we're on a table. But it's really simple. Basically, the Looptimus has a stop button in the top right corner that I can, anytime I press it, it's going to stop all of my tracks. What else Looptimus has is a next and previous button. And when I press these buttons, it's going to cycle me through different pages. And Looptimus has 20 pages, or you could call them banks if you want. And each page has 6 buttons that you can assign to anything. So I've got A, B, C, D, E, and F. So think of it this way. I could be in song 1, and I could have intro, verse, chorus, bridge, outro, ending, and then I could stop the song. And then I can go to song 2 and do the same thing. Intro, verse, pre-chorus, bridge, stop. Song 3, and you can have 20 songs. Another way to look at it is maybe you just want to stay on one page, and I could just do song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4, 5, 6, and stop. So I'm going to show you both ways, but right now I'm going to show you that way first. So all we're going to do is we're going to go to Live and go to Preferences. And I'm going to go to MIDI, and under Looptimus, which is where if you plug in a controller, a keyboard, a controller like Looptimus, it should show up here. Under Looptimus, I'm going to make sure that remote is turned on. There's 3 settings here for MIDI controllers. There's track, meaning if you have a keyboard that you're going to be recording into Live, then you want to turn track on. Sync is if maybe you're syncing up 2 different devices like another computer, you would turn sync on. And remote is if you're going to use the controller as a remote control, which in this case we are. So I'm going to turn remote on. And now, very similar to keyboard mapping, I'm going to go to MIDI, which is in the top right corner of the screen. And almost identical to keyboard mapping, anything that you see on the screen that turned blue can be assigned to any button on Looptimus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Open Up the Heavens. I'm going to press 1A. And then I actually really prefer to have 1 song per bank. So I'm going to go to my next bank. I'm going to make Lion and the Lamb 2A. And then I'm going to go to my next bank, which is my 3rd song. I'm going to make that 3A. And then I'm going to make my stop button right here at the top stop in Ableton Live. Now I just like doing that because I like to look down at Looptimus to see what song I'm actually on. So let's go to song 1 and press 1A, and it's going to start Open Up the Heavens.
Intro 2, 3,
all right.
4.
When I'm done with that song, I can press stop. I can go to my next song and press 2A and it starts the second song. Or I can just go right away and start song 3 and press stop. So there's a lot of ways you could map this, and honestly we're only scratching the surface of what else this controller can do. You can play pads with it from your feet, you can send program changes, it has MIDI out, you can plug in an expression pedal, meaning like a volume pedal, and I could actually map a volume pedal to the master volume in Ableton to fade out all my tracks if I wanted. There's a lot you could do there. But I wanted to show you MIDI mapping so that you would know how to actually map and use an external controller to Ableton Live. All right, hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody's with me. We are diving in deep. We're gonna be doing a lot of really cool stuff here. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna jump into talking about audio routing. How do we actually get the audio out of Ableton Live into our sound system? And there's a basic way to do this, and there's an advanced way to do this. We're gonna start with the basic way. And that would be by using a cable like this. You can buy a cable from Amazon or Sweetwater for like probably $6, and it's a headphone cable. I'm gonna use my headphone jack on my computer, all right? And it splits to 2 1/4-inch cables. And what we're gonna do, it's really simple. We're gonna plug the headphone cable side into my computer, and on this side, what it did is it took a stereo signal, because a headphone jack has 2 sides to it, right? It has the left side and it has the right side. This cable splits it into 2. So on these cables, you always want to remember red is right, gray is left. Red is right, red is right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually send my click out of the left-hand side, and I'm going to send all my tracks out of the right-hand side. We're going to pan them. But we have to do that inside of Ableton Live. Once those are panned, we're going to use direct boxes like this. You would plug your acoustic guitar into these, right? Just get normal direct boxes. And you'll have 2 direct boxes at your sound system, on stage, and you'll plug the click into one direct box, and you'll plug your tracks into the other direct box. And then you plug these into your sound system, and your sound guy will be able to control the click volume, and he'll be able to control the track volume. Now let's look at Ableton Live, how to actually pan the audio. This is very important. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go to Live Preferences and just make sure that your audio output is set to built-in output, because that we're using our headphone jack, all right? Now in the bottom right corner, there's a little button that says I/O. This stands for in and out. I'm going to press this button, and it's going to open up the in and out settings for Ableton Live, not the burger place, but the in and out settings in Ableton Live. Haha. All right, so what we've got here is it opened up all the settings. Now it looks very confusing, but let me break this down. The white boxes at the top here, this says audio from. We don't need this right now because this is for if we're recording audio into Ableton Live. These boxes are asking, where is the audio coming from to record? But we're not using those, so just ignore them. What we're looking at is down here where it says audio to, meaning where is this audio going? And that's what we're concerned with right now. Notice that all of these say the audio is going to the master. That means that the audio is coming out of this track, and it's looping around and going right to this master track over here, this master fader. Down here it says that my master is going to 1 and 2. This is just something you have to remember. 1 is the left-hand side of your headphone jack, and 2 is the right-hand side of your headphone jack. All right? So it's saying the master is going to 1 and 2, which is why when I press play on this, you're hearing the tracks on both sides. Now the click is what's called cue out right here. This is just another thing you have to remember. The click is going out 1 and 2. So here's what we want to do. To shortcut this, I'm going to, let's start with our band cue. So the band cue, we want this to go out 1. So I'm going to change this to external out and choose 1. Then I'm going to change the click to also be 1. All right, so now my click and cues are going out 1. All of my tracks are going to the master, which I'm going to tell this to go out output 2. So now when I press play, you should hear the click
Intro.
on the left-hand side
4.
and all the tracks on the right-hand side. It's panned just like that. Now I could have gone through and individually did each one of these like this. External out 2, external out 2, but that's going to take me forever. So what I did, if you noticed, as a shortcut, I just left them all going to the master and changed the master to 2. All right, so clicking cues are going out 1, my master is going out 2, and boom. Your sound guy should be having
3, 4.
the audio separate. That way you can get the click and the cues to your band so they can hear it in their in-ear monitors, and the sound guy can get the tracks boosted up in the house. So you have to start thinking of all this stuff as another instrument in your band. Like start scheduling it on Planning Center, all right? Computer, do you accept or decline this weekend? It will always accept. That is the beauty of Ableton Live, all right? So you have to start thinking of it as another instrument in your band. That is a very basic way to route the audio. Let's talk about a more advanced way. The reason that this is more advanced is because if you think about it, what we just did is we're sending a set mix to your sound guy, meaning if he wanted to adjust the volume of the acoustic, he can't do that because you're sending him the mix from Ableton down one output. Well, what we're going to do is, this is the advanced way, is we're going to, instead of using our headphone jack, we're actually going to use an external audio interface. And I'm going to show you today an interface that we actually developed specifically for worship leaders called TrackRig. And it's right here on the table with me. And I'm going to actually show you the website so you can actually see more of the details of it. If you go to trackrig.com, this is an interface that we developed specifically for Ableton Live. And it's awesome because you can plug it in via USB to your computer. And TrackRig gives you 8 XLR outputs. We basically took an interface and combined it with a direct box. So this is really easy to plug into your sound system because it's going to give me 8 different outputs that I can send the instruments down. I could send drums here, click here, guitar here, bass, and so forth. So if you go to trackrig.com, you can explore more of this. On the back of the interface, it also has USB ports, which are awesome because you can plug a Looptimus controller or a hard drive or charge your phone back here. So this is TrackRig. Let me show you how to actually use that inside of Ableton Live. So you plug in TrackRig. I'm going to go to Live and go to Preferences. And I'm going to choose Audio. And I'm going to choose under Output, TrackRig should show up. I'm going to choose that. I'm going to then go to Output Config. And I'm going to enable, if these are not all enabled already, you're going to enable the outputs. I'm going to get rid of the stereo pairs because we don't need those. And let's press OK. Now I can go to the in and out settings and I can actually, you'll notice that now I have 8 options instead of 2 because we're using TrackRig. So I could send the click to 1 and I could send this to 2 and I could send this to 3 and 4, and you could go ahead and send all your tracks out the outputs that they need to be going out. Now this is where groups come in handy for sure, because what you can do with groups is you can drag, because I'm doing every track individually here, which would take forever. If I were to have grouped all my guitars together, like this, I could have changed the output of the group itself, and that entire group would go out that output. So that's where groups can be really powerful. When we press play on TrackRig, yep, we do. We should see audio. I don't know if you guys can see that, but you should see audio, the meters blinking in here, and so we have audio coming out into TrackRig. And you just have your sound guy plug in XLR cables to that. So that it would be a little bit more of an advanced way to run audio. But here's the thing is, it's not really that advanced, is it? I mean, it only took us a few minutes to do it. So it's not super advanced, but those are 2 different ways to run audio out of your computer to your sound system. All right? And I'll let you guys decide what you want to do. If you go to trackrig.com, you can purchase this for $3.99, I believe. If you're interested in Looptimus, just go to looptimus.com. I believe I have that up. If you just click on Looptimus at looptimus.com, you can purchase that. This is $2.99. We also, I didn't show you this, but we have a miniature version, which looks like this, and it's just a 3-button controller, and it lets you just, you know, map maybe start, stop, next. Really basic, but that might be all you need if in Ableton Live you're just needing to go through your set list. So if you're interested in any of this stuff, check out looptimus.com. Okay, let's head back to Ableton Live. We've gone through tons of stuff here. Multi-outs, MIDI control, warping, building a set. So what we're going to do is we're going to be moving into arrangement view. Before we do that, I would love to take any questions you guys have. I want to kind of see what's happening. What we've done so far is we've really, I hopefully got everybody who's a beginner to Ableton Live at least caught up to what you would need to run it this weekend. I think session view personally is a really great way to start because it's a little more beginner. It's just easier. It's much easier to build a set because you can drag these things around. You can drag your songs around. And I just think that that makes it easier to get started. One little tip that I would say, if you're using session view, what you could do is actually create one session that looks like this, that has all of your songs in it alphabetically, A through Z from top to bottom, all right? And then what you could do is every weekend just reassign the MIDI controller to what songs you're doing that weekend. So I have one file called like my master song library, and I've got like 100 rows here of all the songs I do. And then every weekend, I just remap the controller to what songs I'm doing that weekend. And then when I'm done with the weekend, I just highlight those MIDI mappings and hit delete. So that can save you a lot of time because you can have one library, and the only time you're spending in Ableton Live is when you add new songs to this library. Now, it didn't take us that long to build a set, maybe 20 minutes, but building a library can really help save you a lot of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump to some questions, and then we're going to jump into arrangement view. We're going to build a set in arrangement view and talk about automation and ProPresenter, all that kind of thing. So let's start. All right, let me go in through here. Let's see what we got. How do you load or save a project I created so I can drag and drop it in? You can go to File, Collect All and Save, and it will create a session for you. And then I would create a shortcut over here to where you're saving your sessions, and you can drag, you can open them all from there, if I'm understanding your question correctly. Is the volume pedal connected to Looptimus the only way to fade, or is there a way to program that inside of Ableton? I'm going to be able to show you that in arrangement view. You can program that in arrangement view. You can do it in session view, but it gets really, really weird. If you're going to be doing a lot of fades and that kind of thing, I would suggest arrangement view. Okay, let's looking. So someone asks from FBC websites, if you're using the headphone cable to send your audio out, all your tracks are playing in mono. That's correct. So what it's doing is it was taking the left and right side of the audio file, merging them together, and panning them right. So yeah, your tracks would be in mono, and that is a downside of using the headphone cable. If you're using something like this, it would allow you to do stereo if you wanted. You could make a stereo pair. It's a good question. Corey says, the cable is hard to use with a new Mac that has USB-C. Good question. My wife actually has a USB-C computer. I have an old Mac, so I have a bunch of USB ports on it. But yeah, the new Macs have the USB-C. But here's the thing, is you can buy, Apple sells adapters that gives you USB-C to USB. So you can get those. What else do we got? Jeremy Wong. Is there a way to program the click to retard at the end of the song? Yes, you can, but again, you would need to do that in arrangement view, and I'll hopefully be able to show you that in the next session. How do you detect the tempo of a song you don't know the tempo of? That's a great question. So this is actually where you can use the tap tempo option. So what I like doing is I would actually bring in a brand new session, I would go to File. Let me make sure I don't need anything in here. I think we're done with this set. So I'm going to go to File, New Live Set. We're not going to save that. All of our precious hard work. And let's just go ahead and bring in, like, sometimes I bring in an MP3 from, sometimes I bring in MP3s from iTunes. But let's just go ahead and bring in the drum track. Just drag this in. Let's just pretend it's an iTunes MP3. And you can press play, all right? And you can also fast forward like this, although I don't hear anything. And it's because my output settings are still set to the track rig. So let's move that back. What you can do is you can use the tap tempo button to tap along with the drum beat. And this will get you pretty close. So it looks like we're at 93 BPM, all right? It depends how perfectly you tap. So I try to get close, all right? And then you can actually use arrangement view, which I'm going to show you later, and you can actually line up the grid to what it should be. So you can just click, you can look at the waveform here and just drag, and you can see it line up when it locks in. So there it is at 90. You can see it's even off at 91. So you can just get really close. I tap it to get the range, and then I bring it to arrangement view to actually get the actual tempo. Okay, so a lot of you guys are talking about fades. That's the other question from Cameron. And again, we're going to do that in arrangement view right now. You can do some fades in session view, but you have to do that on the clip level, on each individual clip level, which is kind of a pain. And you can do that by opening the envelope section here on the clip, double click on it, go to clip, you can choose the volume modulation, all right? And it will let you have to have it warped though to do this, which is also another pain. But you can also draw in a volume fade on a clip like this. I like it. You guys are getting advanced here, all right? So you could draw in a fade if you want, but what's annoying is that you have to actually do it then for every single clip. Like I just did it for that one clip. And in arrangement view, we're going to be able to do that faster. So let's go ahead now and jump into, keep your questions coming. I'm gonna try to hit a lot of this stuff. Let's go ahead and look now at arrangement view, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use arrangement view to build a set. We're gonna do the same thing we did before, but it's gonna be very different in that, so I just said same and different, but I mean same in that we're gonna build a set list. I mean different in that the process to do it is gonna be very different, as you'll see. So let's go to arrangement view. Some guys prefer this view to run all their set lists. And once we get through this, I'll be curious actually. Maybe we'll take a poll from you guys of what you think you'll use. Because I'll be curious what you think versus the pros and cons, which one you'd like to use. So again, let's go ahead and clean up this session and just have here what we need. So I'm going to delete the MIDI tracks. We're going to start with one audio track. I'm going to delete the reverb and delay track. You can also just hide those with hitting the reverb or the send and return buttons down here. And now I have a blank slate. So let's go ahead and start with our first song. We're going to do, in this case, we're going to do This Is Amazing Grace. I'm going to go to my masters. I have a folder here for master tracks. And we're going to do This Is Amazing Grace. The top track, I'm going to rename this and call this band cues. So it's kind of similar, right? We're just kind of on, it's kind of flipped the other way. And I'm going to drag and drop my band cues here. Okay, got my band cues. I can press play.
Intro, 2,
you can hear my
3,
cues.
4.
And it's going down the timeline. What's kind of nice about this view is you can see your whole song from left to right, which is definitely a plus. Now let's go ahead and start bringing in our other instruments. So I'm going to, again, just hold shift to select everything, and I'm going to just drag in everything. Again, if this was a real life scenario, I probably wouldn't bring in every instrument. I would just bring in the instruments that I need for that weekend. But for this demo, it's nice to hear everything. I can go and press play.
Intro,
You'll notice that at the
3,
top,
4.
if I use this little headphone, I can actually skip to anywhere else in the song. Now I'm gonna collapse all these tracks a little bit by doing Command A and just dragging on this little gray line, and it's gonna make all the tracks a little smaller, like this. Now, first thing I noticed when I pressed play on that track was that it's very loud. So we're gonna use the same trick we did in Session View to adjust the volume of everything. I'm gonna press play,
2, 3,
hold
4.
Shift, select everything, and turn them down. I'm going to use the tab key to make sure my volume is correct. There's still a little loud. I'm going to bring it down. There we go. Cool. So that's a real life scenario there of how you might need to adjust the volume of tracks. Those were a little bit too loud. Okay, so I have a song. Now, let's go ahead and turn on the metronome. Now let's go ahead and press play.
Intro 2.
Now the metronome is not in time with my tracks, and that's a problem, right? Now what you could do is under the master, there's an option here where you could automate the tempo of the actual track. So I don't think that we really want to do that. If you click Show Automation right here, this little button that says Show Automation, you can automate the song tempo by drawing in dots. But I'm telling you, I don't even want to show you that right now because it will hurt your brain. And honestly, it's a way to really create a mess. So we're going to do this in a different way. We're not going to use the master to set song tempo. We're going to use a little trick called a tempo track. And all you do is you go to Create and go to Insert Audio Track. And I'm going to rename this to Tempo Track. And I'm going to move this track to the very top. And let's just go ahead and make this white, just so we can visually see that. I'm going to expand this a little bit. Okay, now we have an audio track called Tempo Track. And what we're going to do is we need to bring in a blank audio clip. Now you can just bring in any audio clip and trim it. I have one that you can download one even if you just search blank audio clip. You can download a blank audio clip. And I have one right here. I'm going to just drag and drop this in. It's an audio file that's just blank. There's nothing here. All right. We're going to use warping basically to tell these tracks to follow along with my tempo track. All right, guys, we're getting really advanced here, so you're going to have to get your pen out or whatever and start writing this stuff down. First thing we're going to do is we're going to set the tempo to my song, all right? So This Is Amazing Grace is at, I believe, 98, but let's just double check. This Is Amazing Grace is 98. So I'm going to set my tempo to 98. I'm going to select all of my clips for This Is Amazing Grace and click Warp. Let's just make sure that it's right, and the way I can make sure it's right is just by playing the song and changing the tempo. Cool, and everything's in time. So that means I warped it correctly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the tempo track kind of like the set launch tempo. We're going to use the tempo track to do that. So what we're going to do is let's just say we want to do this at 98, which is the original. I'm going to set the tempo of the tempo track to be 98 and press enter. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to click this button that says slave. When you click it, it's going to change it to be master. And what we're basically saying is that this tempo track clip is now the master, and everything else, all of these other clips here, are the slave, meaning it's going to follow whatever tempo the tempo track is at. I'm going to turn on looping, and I'm going to go ahead and just drag this out. Whoop, grab the end of it and drag it out. I'm going to drag it to the very end of the song. All right. Now, you'll notice that if I just change my tempo track now to 105 and press enter and press slave and master again, my tracks are now playing at 105. If I want to change this maybe to 90, just press 90 and hit enter. Now notice it didn't actually change. You have to click the master and slave button again for it to actually change. But all my tracks are now following whatever the tempo track is set to. This is tricky stuff, especially after you've just learned session view, because it kind of is a backwards way of looking at it. So we're using a tempo track to set our tempo. So let's just say I want to do this at 98. We'll go back to the original. Press enter. Again, press slave and master again to reset it. And it's correct, all right? Now again, you could change the key and tempo of these tracks by doing the same thing we did before, using the transpose knob, right? You just do, everything is the same as far as warping and tempo changes, or warping and key changes. The only thing that's different is the tempo change. And that's where the tempo track comes into play. Okay, so we have a song. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use groups to actually kind of keep this organized. So I'm going to highlight my song here. I'm going to right-click and go to Group Track. And I'm going to rename this to This Is Amazing Grace. So I'm going to keep all of this song inside one group, and I can kind of condense that if I want, like that. And now let's look at our next song. So what I want to have happen here is I actually would like to end This Is Amazing Grace, and I want to crossfade into a pad, because what I want to do is before the next song, I actually want to read a scripture or say something or pray. So I'm going to actually crossfade into a pad. Now at Loop Community, if you go to Loop Community and search worship pads, we have this collection of worship pads that's for $10, and it gives you every key. It gives you an audio file of a pad in every single key. You just go to patches here and search for worship pads, and you'll find this. It's $10. Pretty awesome. So let me show you how this would work. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go to where my pads are, which I think I store them under music. Here's my pads. I can kind of press play on these, and that's what the pad sounds like. And my next song is in the key of C, so I'm going to use the key of C pad. I'm going to drag and drop that pad here. And what I want to have happen is when This Is Amazing Grace is finished, I want the pad to come in. So let's kind of click play and see where This Is Amazing Grace ends. Whoop, I'm zoomed in pretty far. Let's hit play. Cool, I probably want my pad to start coming in right around here. Whoop, I double clicked, which is why I did that. So there's my pad. I'm going to bring it back just a little bit more. My pad's also pretty loud, so I'm going to turn this down a little bit. And let's zoom in, and I'm actually going to use a fade. You'll notice there's a little box here on the pad that I can use to fade in, so it's not so abrupt. Let's hear what this sounds like. Cool, we're right into a pad. Awesome. Now I'm gonna probably want a minute or so of this pad. This is also a cool thing about arrangement views. You can kind of program out your entire worship set. So I'm gonna highlight and drag this pad back. You know, probably give myself a little bit of, that's probably enough time. All right. I'm gonna also do a fade out on the pad by just dragging this little fade out. You can hear what this sounds like. The pad's gonna fade out. So now let's go ahead and start bringing in our next song. Our next song is going to be, and I'm gonna collapse this so we have some more room. I'm gonna also collapse the pad. Our next song is going to be Cornerstone in the key of C. So let's go to Cornerstone, and let's just go and bring in our tracks. I'm going to bring in the Q file here, all right, and I'm going to bring in everything else. There's a lot of tracks on this one. And if I were really taking my time, I would again only use the ones I need. Let's go ahead and make sure that these actually play. Let's see what this sounds like coming out of the pad.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
I'm going to probably give myself a little more time, so I'm going to extend the pad like this.
Intro.
Let's turn the click off for a second.
4.
I'm going to fade out the pads a little earlier.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
Ooh, there we go. That's nice. Perfect sweet spot there. Okay. So I've got Cornerstone. Now, let's talk about the click, because the click, right, is still following what This Is Amazing Grace was. And this is where we're going to use the tempo track again. I'm going to go back and bring in my blank audio clip, which is in my library. You'll have a library too. So go to tempo. I'm just going to bring and drag in onto the tempo track to the very beginning of this song, all right? And now I'm going to double click on the tempo track, and I'm going to set this to the tempo it needs to be, which it's going to be 72. Press enter. I'm going to turn on slave or master, right? Make this the master. And then I'm going to go ahead and just drag. Actually, it's not letting me drag. And here's why. You have to make sure that loop is turned on. So now that loop is turned on, it's going to let me drag, and it'll loop all those tempo tracks. Let's go and see if that worked. It changed.
Intro, 2, 3.
And now we're into
4.
Cornerstone. Now let's just say I wanted that tempo to actually change earlier. I could drag that all the way back here. Notice it's changing the length of my pad. I'm going to have to adjust that now again. But you'll notice it changed right there now for Cornerstone. I could rename this as well if I wanted to. I could rename this to Cornerstone Click. And I could also rename this one to, where's rename? I can rename this one to This Is Amazing Click. All right. So I could have my click start early if I wanted it to. But we're actually going to have it start. Actually, I'm going to show you this later. We'll leave it like that. We'll leave it like that for now. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you maybe a trick later of how you can actually automate the click to turn off during that speaking moment and then turn back on when we get to Cornerstone. So we'll get there though, because that's a bit more advanced than what we're already doing. So hang on. I know some of you guys are thinking that question. So now my click change tempo. Again, I can right click, change the color of these if I want. You have your color palette. What I like to do is again group these songs. So I'm going to highlight all those tracks, right click, choose group, rename this group to Cornerstone. And now I have my third song. Now if I was building a set list, I would just keep doing it from left to right. I would keep adding songs and layers. If you wanted to get super organized, you could use the same tracks, meaning you could make tracks that are called drums and always put your drums in the same audio track. That might help you if you're using an audio interface and you're having to route, because that will give you a lot less tracks to have to route through. Okay, so that's how you can crossfade tracks in and out. Again, I could if I wanted to. I'm not seeing a song where I need to do this, but you know, I can crossfade in on individual instruments if I need to. You can make fades. You can highlight tracks like this and right click, and you can go to reverse clips if you want to, like, maybe do a reverse cymbal swell. Sometimes that's pretty cool. So there's things like that you can do inside of the editing of these tracks. Let's go ahead and close the group. We have a set now with a pad. It's following our click. Now let's talk about MIDI inside of arrangement view, okay? So what you can do in arrangement view is you can actually, this is a benefit of arrangement view, is you can add markers. So in the top, I'm going to press this little set button, and what it's going to do is it's going to add a little flag. And I can rename this flag to be intro. Let's see if this is the intro actually. Let's press play.
Intro 2,
it is.
3, 4.
And I can go over here and add another marker and maybe make this verse. I think that's verse. Let's press play and see. Cool.
Verse 2.
Here's another verse. I'm going to click here and press set to add a marker. And we'll call it verse. Now I could go through and do this for the whole song. Here's the chorus. And here's what's cool about markers though, is that now you can actually MIDI map those markers and use a controller like Looptimus to jump to those markers in the song, all right? Let me show you how to do that. If you go to MIDI, again, anything that turned purple can be assigned to a button on Looptimus. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and choose intro, and I'm going to make the intro 1A as well as the play button. The play and 1 is going to be the intro. Verse is going to be 1B. The chorus will be 1C. And again, I could keep mapping down the entire song if I want. And then on my next song, it could be 2A, 2B, 2C. So check it out though. When I leave MIDI mapping mode, if I press 1A,
Intro 2,
it goes to
3,
the intro.
4.
Let's just say I want to go to the chorus. I can press the chorus button, and it jumps to the chorus. Or back to the verse. Ableton uses something called quantization, meaning it's going to wait one bar to do what you tell it to do. And you can always change that setting right here in the top left corner. You can change the quantization to what you want. By default, it's on one bar.
Chorus 2,
So when I say
4.
go to the verse, press it, and then it goes after one bar, right? Let me try it again so you can hear it. Press 2, 3, 4, and there it goes. So I could use Looptimus to control my tracks inside of arrangement view. I built a set out here. You know, you can keep going, obviously. You can build as many songs as you want down the timeline. It is kind of nice because you get to visually see how long your worship set is. So right now we're at 12 minutes. I'm looking down here at the bottom right corner, and it shows me a time. So you can kind of plan in your talking moments and that kind of thing, which can be really helpful. Okay, let's talk about something that I know a lot of you guys are very interested in, and that is controlling ProPresenter from Ableton Live, which is a pretty cool idea because, you know, if you've got a track and you're playing through a song straight through, why not have your lyrics actually change along with you? So what we're going to do, I have one computer here, so I'm actually going to be using ProPresenter and Ableton on the same computer. In many of your churches, I'm guessing, you have a ProPresenter computer at the back of your worship center. You'll have to configure it a little differently to do that, but I'll show you how. And but let's go and just dive in now to automating lyrics with ProPresenter. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Create, and we're going to go to Insert MIDI Track. And we're going to use a MIDI track to make ProPresenter cues, all right? So where'd my MIDI track go? I dragged it somewhere and I don't know where it went. Let's try it again. Here it is. I'm going to rename and call this MIDI track ProPresenter. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to use MIDI clips to send information to ProPresenter to tell it when to change slides, all right? And this is pretty simple to do. First thing we're going to do is you're going to need to go into your audio MIDI setup. So I'm going to do Command Space and just search audio MIDI setup. If your Mac has this, every Mac has this. This is going to pull up your audio MIDI setup window. What you're going to see here is the IAC driver, and we're going to double click on this. And all right, guys, we're getting really geeky and nerdy here, so hope you're with me, hope you're following along. We're going to open up the IAC driver, And you're going to make sure that the device is online. So make sure you turn it on. IAC bus 1, turn this on. Mine's already on because I've been doing this for a while. And now that that is on, all right, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Let's go to Live and go to Preferences. And under MIDI, if that's turned on, you should see, I don't know why Looptimus just disappeared, but let's go ahead and just plug that back in. If you turn the IAC driver on, then you should see IAC in your MIDI settings here. Now under Output, you want to make sure that IAC track is turned on. Because what we're basically saying is we're going to use the IAC driver to send MIDI notes to ProPresenter. So you want to make sure track is on. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is I'm actually just unplug Looptimus for a second. I don't know why it disconnected there, but IAC driver is turned on. Now what we're going to do is let's just look at ProPresenter for a second. So I have ProPresenter open. I have my slides for This Is Amazing Grace. If I click them, it goes to my different sections of the song. What we need to do is we actually need to enable MIDI inside of ProPresenter. So I'm going to go to ProPresenter Preferences, and I'm going to go over here to Communications. Now, in ProPresenter, they give you a MIDI module, and you have to turn that on and enable it. Once that's enabled, you go to Communications and go to MIDI, and I already have one created here, so I'm actually going to just delete that because I want to start from scratch with you guys so we can walk through this together. You're going to click on Add Device and choose MIDI. I'm going to call this Ableton Live. All right. The hardware is going to be core MIDI. The device is device. All right. And hit Save. I'm going to click Settings. And actually, I'm not really sure why the, let me open up Audio MIDI settings again and open up the IAC driver. Why is that window not opening? Let's try this again. I'm going to close Audio MIDI setup. There we go. I don't know what happened there. Let's go and make sure it's turned on. Hit Apply. For some reason, it disconnected on me. Go to ProPresenter, go to Preferences. Anytime you start messing with MIDI over Wi-Fi like this, and MIDI, things can get a little complicated. All right. I'm going to choose MIDI, hit Save, and press Connect. All right. We're going to click on MIDI Setup here. And here it shows you all the different commands inside of ProPresenter and what MIDI notes actually trigger those commands. So you could trigger a playlist, you could trigger your next slide, you could trigger, start video, you could clear videos. You can automate a lot of stuff here. So we're going to look at the next slide one, and it's C1, okay, is the note. C1 will actually advance the next slide. So let's press OK. I'm going to close this out. Let's go back to Ableton Live. And what we're going to do now is we're going to create MIDI clips that have C1 in it for advancing the slide. So I'm going to just highlight here, right-click, and go to Insert MIDI Clip. Double-click. And now we're going to draw in a MIDI note to start C1. So let's find C-1, which is right here. I'm just kind of rolling along the piano roll. And we're going to put in a MIDI note there. I'm going to open up the in and out settings on this, and we need to make sure we tell this track to go to the IAC driver. This is where it's going, right? When we press play, you're going to notice there's a little meter here. When we press play, you're going to see that light up, and that means it sent a MIDI note. You want to see that. It light up, it sends a MIDI note out the IAC driver. Okay. Now let's just make sure, double check again, because I know I changed some things. Let's make sure the IAC driver is turned on. It is, the output, all right? So let's go to ProPresenter. we'll start here, and let's just see, let's give this a try. Let's see if it actually triggers my next slide when I hit that note. Okay, so it did not. And it could be with my ProPresenter settings. This actually should give me, under source, I should be seeing the IAC driver here, and I'm not. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just close ProPresenter. We're going to relaunch ProPresenter, just to make sure. All right, let's go to ProPresenter. I actually don't own ProPresenter, so I'm going to just try it. All right, let's go to Preferences. Let's go to Modules, and we're going to demo the modules for the MIDI. All right, let's go to Communications. There's the IAC driver. Okay. So I'm going to just delete this. We'll start over, right? I'm going to click Add Device, go to MIDI. All right. Should come up like this. You could name this Ableton Live if you wanted. We'll just leave it like it is. Under Source, you want to turn on IAC. This is basically saying, ProPresenter is basically asking, where am I listening for MIDI information? And now we're telling it. We're saying, you're listening for it over MIDI from the source IAC bus. Cool? And then you click hit save and press connect. So now ProPresenter is connected to IAC. Let's go and go to the beginning here. Let's launch Ableton Live, and let's see if our slides change. The slides did not change. And let's see why. Let's go to Preferences. I'm also, just for the sake of this, I'm going to press save. I'm going to rename the session to Arrangement View. I've had this open for a while, so there's a possibility there's something. I just need to reset some of this stuff. Let's open up Ableton Live again. I'm going to open up my session. Let's press play. There we go. So I don't know. Sometimes you just have to reboot some things. So you saw my slides actually change as it approached this MIDI clip. So I hope that makes sense, because we're kind of doing some pretty advanced stuff here. I have a MIDI track. The MIDI clip in that track is sending C1. It's sending it through the IAC driver, right? In ProPresenter, we have it set to be listening for the IAC driver. Again, you can always change or look at the MIDI notes here by going to MIDI setup, and these are all the different functions you could do. If you wanted to clear all slides, you could send C#2. If you wanted to go to the next playlist item, like the next song in your ProPresenter playlist, it would be A#-2. All right. So let me go ahead and launch Ableton Live again, and let's just kind of watch. What we're going to do is I'm going to just copy and paste this clip down the timeline for where I need my slides to go. So let's go and press play. All right, so that's a little too early. I want this slide to go up right here.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
Maybe we'll just put it a little bit right before, like this. And actually what I'm going to do, just for the sake of time here, I'm going to actually just go ahead and do this for the, let's do the chorus. I'm going to copy and paste. Let's put my chorus slide here, and somewhere here is going to be the second half of the verse. We'll kind of adjust that as we get there. Let's go ahead and press play and see what happens. Let's start at the beginning. Here we go.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
All right, so it advanced the slide. Actually, I actually renamed this wrong. This is not the chorus.
Chorus 2,
Oh, it is the chorus.
3, 4.
Wow, I don't know how I got way back messed up here. I think the verse is actually previous here.
Verse
Yep.
2, 3, 4.
So this is where you want to make sure you put your markers in correctly.
2, 3, 4.
I actually didn't even map this out correctly in the beginning. So my verse actually starts there. Cool. All right, so let's just delete this one. All right. Actually, we don't even need to. We'll just copy and paste. Okay, guys. Sorry about that. let's go and start this from the beginning. Put the group, go to the first slide. Let's go to Ableton Live and press play.
Intro 2.
We'll skip ahead.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
Cool, so there's verse 1. When it gets to the next MIDI clip, it's going to fire and go to verse 1.5, or whatever you want to call it, verse 2.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
There it did, it changed my slide. All right, and then you guys get the idea. It's going to change it again for chorus.
Chorus 2, 3, 4.
Cool. So you'll never have late lyrics again. It can be all automated based on how you actually have your song set up. You would just want to make sure that you have your songs, if you're doing it the way I'm doing it now, you'd want to make sure that your slides are all actually in order. Otherwise, you could you know, use MIDI setup to trigger playlists or different sections of a song like that if you wanted. But I would just probably set it up so all your slides are from left to right. Okay, now what you could do is actually I just save a MIDI clip so that I have this always. So I don't have to redraw in that MIDI clip. I actually just, if you just drag this here, it'll save it as a MIDI clip, and I just call this next slide PP. So now I have a clip in my library that I can always use to bring in for the next slide command. And you could do that for any of your commands. You could make a whole library of different ProPresenter commands to trigger. Now, one of the questions you guys are probably asking is, well, wait a minute, what if I have two different computers, and how are those actually going to connect with each other, all right? So this is where you need to actually use network settings to do this. So this is a case where maybe you've got your laptop up on stage, and then your ProPresenter computer is back in the back of the room. You can do it exactly the same way I just did it, but you have to connect the computers to each other. The computers need to be talking with each other. And I actually have a video on YouTube that goes into deep detail on that. It's hard to demonstrate here just because I only have one computer. But I'll show you how you would set it up. And it all happens still within the audio MIDI setup. So let's go to open up audio MIDI setup. You will again, of course, turn on your IAC driver. But in the top right corner, you're going to press the network button. This should bring up the network settings, and it's not, and I'm not sure why. Let's go and reopen audio MIDI setup. There it is. I don't know why my computer's acting so weird. And it's going to bring up the MIDI network setup. And you're going to do this on each computer. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to enable session 1, all right? Then you can rename this to be Ableton Live Computer. If I was on my ProPresenter computer, I would name this ProPresenter Computer. Make sure you change this, who may connect to me, to anyone. And then on the Ableton Live computer, you want your live routings to be IAC driver, basically saying anything that is coming in on the IAC driver, send this to the network session 1, which is actually right here. That's what we just enabled. So then here's what you do. On your ProPresenter computer, you want to make sure you're on the same network. This will not work if the computers are not on the same network. So it needs to be the same Ethernet network, or a wireless network, or a private ad hoc network. They need to be on the same network. So the Ableton Live computer would look like this: Ableton Live, IAC to network session 1. And make sure session 1 is turned on, and then make sure anybody can connect to you like that. On your ProPresenter computer, you would go to this exact same window, but you would maybe change this one to ProPresenter, all right? And these actually you could leave blank on the ProPresenter one. All you would have to do is you would find the session right here that says Ableton Live and press connect. And what that's going to do when you press connect on the ProPresenter computer, it's connecting your ProPresenter computer to the Ableton Live session that you created on your Ableton computer. And now what's going to happen is those MIDI notes we were sending are going to be sending through the IAC driver, over the network, into the IAC driver on the other computer, triggering ProPresenter. All right? I did not tell you that this part was going to be super simple. We're getting really geeky and nerdy here. But this is something that people are really wanting to do, and they're wanting to automate lyrics. I wouldn't say it's like beginner level. There's definitely like a learning curve there, but once you've done it a few times, it's like anything. Like riding a bike, whatever. You learn maybe why things are not working. Like even just there where, we had to kind of troubleshoot some stuff. The more you do it, the more you'll know what to troubleshoot to make it work, all right? But it's pretty simple once you know what you're doing there. But you're using the IAC driver and network session. Okay, so we are deep now into Ableton Live. I told you earlier that I was actually going to show you a very advanced trick on using the IAC driver to stop your metronome. So, you ready? Here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new, you go ahead and close this out. Go ahead and close these groups. We're going to create a brand new MIDI track, and I'm going to call this Stop Button Control. All right, we're going to use the IAC driver. We're going to make a MIDI clip. So let's look at where we want this to happen. We wanted it to happen during the pad and then bring it back on for cornerstone. So let's just make sure that our metronome is even working still. So I'm going to turn metronome on. Let's make sure it's in time with cornerstone.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, good. So the metronome is still set up correctly. We're good. What we're going to do is we're going to choose where we want this metronome to stop. So I want it to stop right here. So I'm going to right click and go to Insert MIDI Clip. Okay. And now we're going to actually draw in a MIDI clip or a MIDI note that we want to send to turn off the metronome. Now here's the thing is we need to actually assign a MIDI note to that metronome. So I'm actually going to use a controller like Looptimus, and actually let's hope that, I think this will work. Let's just plug it back in. And I'm going to go to Live and go to Preferences and turn on my MIDI controller. Looptimus remote is on, okay. I'm going to go to MIDI mapping, and I'm going to click on the metronome button, and we're just going to choose a MIDI note. So I'm going to go to like page 20 and just press like 20 F. And I assigned a MIDI note to the metronome, and I assigned the note C8. You can see it right there. That's my metronome on-off button. So now what I'm going to do is on this MIDI clip, I'm actually going to draw in that MIDI note. So I'm going to go to C8, which is right here, and click right there. Now what you want to do is you want to go back into your preferences and make sure that the IAC driver on the input is turned on for remote, because now we're using the IAC driver as a remote control inside of Live. Let's go ahead and press play. Now it didn't work, and that's because my MIDI track, I need to change the output to the IAC driver. Let's try this again.
2, 3, 4.
And right as it hit that MIDI note, it turned my metronome off automatically, which is great. Now we're going to want to turn it back on for when cornerstone comes up. So let's look here. I'm going to turn it on about right here. And let's go and fast forward through my pad.
Intro, 2.
And it turned my
3,
metronome back on.
4.
And now we're back in. So that's a super advanced way, right? Now we're using the IAC driver to actually send MIDI notes all within Ableton Live. And you could do that with all sorts of stuff.
Verse, 2.
You could have the IAC driver
4.
trigger different markers if you wanted. You can get really geeky and nerdy with this. Okay. What I want to talk about now is actually building your own click track. So I'm going to save this session. I'm going to go to File, New Live Set. We're covering a ton of stuff today, you guys. This is pretty crazy. We're going to build a brand new live set. And let's just say that we actually want to build a click track for maybe a custom song. Maybe you wrote a song for your church and you want to make a band director like cue track that's like verse, 2, 3, 4. What we're going to do is we're going to go into Arrangement View and we're going to add a MIDI track. And if you go to loopcommunity.com, if you go to the store, we actually sell a click and cue pack that works very easy with Ableton Live. So let's try to launch this. I don't know, my computer's acting very strange today. Let's go here. Let's try this link. If you go to the store anyways, under store you'll be able to access the click and cue pack. And I believe it's $5, maybe $10. And apparently my internet's not working. Oh, there it goes. So not the click sounds, but you want the band cue pack right here. And you can buy that, and when you buy that, inside of Ableton Live, the click pack will come up right here. And I'm going to click and drag this onto this MIDI track. Or you can also actually just click and drag and drop right here. What it's going to do is it's going to bring up this device that gives you a bunch of click sounds. So here's click.
1, 2.
Whoops, I muted that
3,
one.
4. Chorus.
A bunch of different
instrumental. Verse 2. Bridge.
Cues that you can use, all right? And now we can use this to go and create our click track. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to rename this and call this click. And we're going to build a click first. So I'm going to make one bar, right click, go to Insert MIDI Clip, double click on that. And now I have a piano roll here. If I turn on this little headphone, I can actually listen to all these different sounds.
Intro.
And let's change the grid to be quarter notes. And now I'm going to just pull out the pencil tool. You can do this by doing Command B, and it gives you a little pencil. You can draw in the click, just like that. If you mess up, you can click on them and delete them. But now I have a click. If I want to make that longer, I can just click and drag this out for my whole song. All right, let's just say your song is 2 minutes long. If you change the tempo here, your MIDI is actually going to still follow that tempo. Cool, right? So let's just say my song's at 120. Actually, let's slow it down. Let's say it's 100. And now let's go and right click and go to duplicate, or actually, duplicate, and we're going to call this one cues. All right? Let's go ahead and delete all those. And now let's draw in some cues. So I'm going to highlight and right click and go to Insert MIDI Clip. And now I can draw in my cues. So if I want there to be intro 2, 3, 4, it would be like this.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Right? And it would sound just like this.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
All right? Now I'm going to copy and paste this, and let's just say down here is my chorus. I'm just going to delete that and make it chorus.
Chorus. Chorus 2, 3, 4.
So you can save a lot of time by just copying and pasting those MIDI clips.
Bridge.
Let's make this the bridge.
Bridge 2, 3, 4.
All right, so I would go through my whole song, and then I can go to File, Export Audio, and I can export those tracks as WAV files. So if I were to do this, what I would do is actually, before I do that, I would just select all by doing Command A and go to File, Export Audio. And I'm going to choose, it's going to say, what are you wanting to export? I'm going to say, instead of rendering the master track, because that would give me just one file with both the click and the cues together, instead, I'm actually going to export all individual tracks. So it's going to give me a WAV file for the click, and it's going to give me a WAV file for the cue. I can choose what type of file I want. Let's make them waves. There's a bunch of other options here. I'm going to turn off the create analysis file. We don't need that. Let's hit export. It's going to ask me, where do you want to export? And I'm going to just export them to my music folder as my song, and hit save. And now, if we go to my music folder, there we are. We've got my song. Now it gave me the reverb and delay tracks, which I can just delete those. And this one is the master,
Intro.
meaning it has it all in one. So I'm going to just delete that. But now I have two. One's the cues.
Intro. 2, 3, 4.
And one is the click. And now these are audio files that I could use to bring into Ableton Live. But I just created my own custom click and cue track using Ableton Live, using MIDI, and using the Loop Community Cue Pack, which you can purchase from loopcommunity.com/shop. All right, we're going through tons of stuff. Now, the next thing I want to do is talk with you about how to customize a track. So let's just say you buy a track from Loop Community, and you're like, the intro is too short, we need to extend it. Or the chorus, we want to do 2 choruses instead of 1 chorus. I'm going to show you now how you can customize a track so it works for what you're doing at your church. Now again, we're going to use Arrangement View for this. So let's look at Arrangement View. And let's go ahead and bring in a song. I'm actually going to go to File, New. It's always nice to just start with a fresh slate. Let's go to Arrangement View. Let's delete all these tracks. All right. And let's just go ahead and bring in a song. Let's do, how about we do Open Up the Heavens? Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in all my tracks. I'm going to start with the cues at the top. That's just because I like my cues to always be at the top. And let's bring in everything else in. Hold Command to drop those in vertically. That's a trick. Remember that one. That's when you're going to want to write down on a sticky note. Hold Command when you're dragging in tracks to drop them in the way that you want them. Okay, so we have all of our tracks here. First thing I'm going to do is set the tempo of the grid so that these lock up with the click. Because when I press play,
Intro. 2,
it's not
3,
in time with the click.
4.
So I'm going to, up here, set the tempo to 99.
Intro.
So
2,
now my click
3,
is
4.
locked into the tracks, meaning my tracks are locked into the grid. What I mean by grid are these lines. You can see them here. And you can visually see when it's not locked into the grid. Now before I like customizing any tracks, I want to map it out. So I'm going to use that little marker option to map the song out. So I'm going to press play.
Intro. 2, 3,
Press
4.
the set button. Rename it. It's going to be intro. I'm going to make myself a little shortcut here. I'm actually going to use the key commands to assign a key to the set button. I'm going to make it A. So anytime I press A, it's actually going to drop a marker. Now what's nice is I can just scroll through the song, and anywhere that I see a little cue, I know that there's some cue there. So I'm going to just click, drop a marker by pressing A. Notice it's not working. This is because in the top right corner, there's a keyboard that's turned on. Let's turn that off. What that keyboard means is it's actually saying, when it's turned on, it means that you're using your computer keyboard as like a piano, which in this case, we're using it as a remote, so we're going to turn that off. Let's press A. Notice I'm dropping markers throughout the entire song, because I know where that these are all sections, or these are some sort of cue. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just listen to them and then rename them to what they need to be.
Verse 2, 3.
Okay, that's
4.
the verse.
Pre-chorus. 2.
Here's the
3,
pre-chorus.
4. Chorus.
It's worth taking the time to do this
Intro.
and to do it right, as we learned earlier with our ProPresenter issue, or
Verse 2.
where if you don't do this right at the beginning, it can just cause some problems. So take the time
Pre-chorus.
and map out your song,
Chorus. 2.
right? And you can do it pretty quick. It doesn't take forever.
Chorus.
Here's the chorus. I'm using some key commands here. I'm actually clicking, doing rename.
Intro.
Here's the intro again. And we're just going to go to the bridge, just for the sake of time. Actually, no, let's keep going past the bridge.
Bridge.
Here's another bridge.
Intro. Intro 2, 3, 4.
Here's the intro.
Chorus 2, 3.
And here's the chorus. And I don't know, we're this far.
Chorus 2, 3.
This is my OCD kicking in, right? But it's like, why not just finish it out?
Outro 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
And this is the end. So good job, you guys. In 1 minute, we just mapped out the entire song. I can zoom out and see the song. This is going to come in handy when you start editing a song. It's going to be helpful to see where we're at and what we're editing. So, for example, let's just say that you're like, you know, we actually want to do 2 intros at the beginning of this song. Well, what you don't want to do, and actually I'm going to just collapse everything by doing Command A to give us more viewing room. What you don't want to do is highlight this like that and then do a copy and paste. Because then you're going to have to like move everything down the timeline. So if I click paste, it pasted it in, but all my markers are wrong now. So you don't want to do that, because I would have to then move all the markers down the timeline to match. And I actually just moved that cue. All right, that's correct now. All right. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use the loop bracket. And that is this little bracket that's at the top of your screen in arrangement view. And it's always there, just hanging out somewhere. So you're going to grab the bracket, and we're going to zoom in, and we're going to take the bracket, and we're going to hug it to the verse, or the intro, like this. So it's the length of the intro. I'm going to right-click and go to duplicate time. We're basically saying take this time and duplicate it. But what's awesome is that it actually moves your markers down the timeline with it. So let's go ahead and look at my cue track and see what we got here. Let's go ahead and press play.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
So we have 2 intros. However, there is a trick with the cue, because the cue was at the end of that section.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
So it said verse, but actually this is another intro. And it's because I duplicated the end of that section. So all we're going to do is we're just going to drag that back and delete that cue. And you can just highlight and copy and paste the intro cue again.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
So now we've got 2 intros. Now let's just say that down here at the end of the song, I don't want to do that outro, or the instrumental between the bridge and the chorus. So again, I'm going to highlight this like that, hug it, right click, and go to delete time. And now it's going to just delete that whole section with the markers. And let's just make sure my cues are correct.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
So those are not correct. So I'm going to highlight those and delete them. And I'm going to drag back the chorus. See if this works.
Chorus 2, 3.
There it is. Like magic. There's my cues. Now, if I wanted to do some more in-depth editing, I could, maybe do fade outs on guitars, maybe even remove guitar sections. You can customize the tracks all you want, but you can duplicate time and delete time using this loop bracket. This thing is going to be your best friend when you're editing tracks. This is really helpful. So now that I've edited my tracks how I want them, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename all of these. This is kind of a pain, but I'm going to have to rename all of these track titles to what that instrument is. I'm going to do this quickly by just turning on caps lock, doing Command R for rename, type in cues, press the down arrow, Command R, type it in, down arrow, Command R, type it in, down arrow. You get the idea. All right? You can name these whatever you want. I'm making it pretty easy by just doing electric 1, 2, 3. All right. The reason I'm naming these is because you'll notice that when I brought these files in, it named them as the song, but I really want these to export as the instrument name, and it uses the track name as the export name. So let's go to Command A to select all, go to File, Export, choose all individual tracks, make sure you're exporting WAV files and hit export. I'm not going to do it now because it's going to probably take 2 minutes to export all those. But what it's going to do is it's going to give me a brand new set of WAV files that I could then call maybe like, you know, Matt's custom version of Open Up the Heavens. That's a long title. I would just call it Open Up the Heavens Custom. And then now I could use those tracks when I'm making a new set list to use at church. So you can use arrangement view to really do some like deep down editing. All right, the other thing I want to show you, and this is the last thing I have on my list, but we're going to go to questions right after this, is people ask, how do you make song sections in session view? So in arrangement view, right, we have these song sections that you can jump around to, verse, chorus, intro. People ask, well, how do you do that in session view? Because I hope that by now you're really kind of making up your own mind on what view you think makes the most sense for you and how you run tracks. There are pros and cons of both views. Session view, I think the pros of session view is it's easy to make a set list, easy to reorder the set list, easy for MIDI mapping. I think it's a lot easier to kind of visually handle all the tracks. The cons are that you can't do a lot of automations. You could do the ProPresenter cues, you could still do that, but you can't do a lot of like the crossfading in between tracks like we did with the pad. Arrangement view, the pros are that you can do crossfades, automate your set. The cons are that it's kind of messy to look at. There's tracks everywhere. You have to use a tempo track, where in session view you could use the edit launch BPM. Arrangement view, I feel like it's just a little bit more, there's just a lot to look at, a lot going on in there. But this is where you just need to kind of decide. Both views are great. Both views you can do a lot with. And you'll just have to make a decision based on how you lead, how you think you're going to use Ableton Live. And you don't have to use the same view every time. For example, when I lead, I actually prefer to use session view. But there are times when I'll use arrangement view. And that will be times when maybe it's like a Good Friday service, or an Easter service that I want to really program out, or a Christmas service that needs to be more like, programmed. Like where I know how long it is and things are flowing in and I just press play once and let it go. But most of the time I personally use session view, but that would be up to you guys. Actually, right now, let's take a vote. In the comment box, go ahead and type in if you think you're going to be using session view or arrangement view. And actually, we're going to come back to those responses after I show you how to make sections in session view. So you have to still use arrangement view to do this, all right? So what you do is you bring in your song into arrangement view like we did, and you add the section markers like we did here. And then all you do is we're going to use the loop bracket to choose the intro section, and you're going to right click on the loop bracket and you're going to go to Consolidate Time to New Scene. What it's going to do is it's going to take all the tracks in this time and add it to a brand new scene in session view. Let's go to session view and look, and there it is. I'm going to drag this up to the top, and we're going to call this intro. When we press play, let's see what happens. Yep, that's the intro. I probably should have done another one for the very beginning of the song. Now notice everything is grayed out. That's because I was playing audio from session view and arrangement view. And there's a little button right here that says it's orange, and this is called the Back to Arrangement View button. When you click this, we're basically saying, let's go back to arrangement view. Let's listen to the audio in arrangement view instead of session view. Okay, let's go to verse. I'm going to hug it, right click, Consolidate Time to New Scene. Let's rename this to verse. Let's do the pre-chorus, Consolidate Time to New Scene, and let's do the chorus. All right, so now we have chorus. And actually, you know what? Just for the kicks, let's go ahead and do the beginning of the song. And I'm just going to call this like the start. Consolidate Time to New Scene. We're We're going to call this start. We're going to drag that to the top. So when we press play,
Intro.
It's going to play the beginning of my song, right? Although before that, it's a pretty short start section. I would have to trigger the intro.
3, 4.
So now I'm in my intro. Let's pretend we're going to go to the chorus. We'll go back to the verse. And again, I could use Looptimus to map these sections. So let's just say this is song 18. I can make the start 18A.
3, 4.
Intro is B. Verse is 18C. Pre-chorus is D. Chorus is C.
Chorus 2, 3.
And I can use
4.
Looptimus now to control and jump to those different sections in my song. So again, this comes down to how you lead worship. Do you see yourself as someone who's going to be jumping around to different sections in a song when you're actually playing the song? And if you're that type of worship leader, then this is a great setup for you. You could use sections and Looptimus and use it to be completely spontaneous while you're playing. But if you're a worship leader who, once you kind of set the song how you like it, you just are going to play it through that way every time, then Ableton's great as well, because you can customize your arrangement in arrangement view and export those tracks exactly as your custom arrangement and use that every time. So a lot of different ways to do this. There's no wrong or right way to do it, just a lot of different ways. I'm going to look at the comments here and see what you guys are saying. I'm actually really curious. After you've seen all this, what do you think? Pros and cons of both. We got session view, arrangement view, session, arrangement. Wow, it's kind of split down the middle. Session, session, arrangement, session. It sounds like more people are saying session, but it does seem like it's pretty even split, which is cool. That's really awesome. So, I mean, we have gone into some like really deep stuff with Ableton Live. We've built a set in session view. We've built a set in arrangement view. We've talked about MIDI control, ProPresenter control, customizing tracks. Let's go to some questions now. Let's see what we got. Let me make sure I am starting back where I left off. Okay, G35 King asks if you can increase the tempo on multiple songs, and I believe I answered that question by using the tempo track. If you're trying to automate it in the master, it gets way complicated and very messy. So I would use a tempo track for sure to do that. For quantization, can you make it so it's a full section play before it changes? No, you cannot. So Ableton Live is meant for very much live playing, like very spontaneous live playing, so you would need to set it to 1 bar or 2 bar. That's a good question though. But no, you couldn't say like when it's at the end of this section then go to the next. Now you could using something called follow actions, but that gets really intense with the IAC driver. You would have to say when this clip is done playing, go to next. Like for example, if I double click on a clip here in session view, if you open up this launch option down here, it gives you these options. And what you could say is trigger, and you say the quantization would be global, and you would say after 8 bars. So this is where you would just need to know the length of that clip. You need to know a little bit more music theory, right? So I would look at the clip and see, okay, this clip is 7 bars. So after, 6 bars, then do what? Go to next. So you could use follow actions to do that, but you're gonna have to set that up for every single one of your clips, which is pretty time consuming. Good question though. That would all happen under follow actions. RCW3 says, so you can only add MIDI ProPresenter cues in arrangement view. No, actually, you can do it in session view as well. What you would do is I would just take that clip. I would probably make the clip in session view. Or sorry, I would make the clip in arrangement view, and then I would drag that clip into session view. So I would say, and you have to add a MIDI track, obviously, to do that. Bring in the clip, and this is your next slide clip. And what you would do is you would actually, so let's just say, it depends how you're running this. If you're doing it in rows like this, then you probably would want next slide like that. If you're doing it one song per row, then what I would do is you would need this MIDI clip to be a lot longer than it is, right? So I would change the length of this to be like 120, right? So I have one MIDI clip now that's 120 bars, and I would draw in the ProPresenter cues on the bars that they need to actually change. So when I press play on my tracks, it's also going to be playing through this
Intro
MIDI clip, triggering your ProPresenter. And then your next question was, doesn't look, you can easily go back and forth to create them, and you actually can. So that's actually a good question. What you could do is go into arrangement view, right? Start in arrangement view, create a MIDI clip for this, like this, and then go ahead and add in all of your ProPresenter cues to this clip. Or another trick, actually, is you could bring in the next slide to every single section here. So we have a bunch of next slides, right? Next slide, next slide. You know, I would just keep doing this the whole song forever. Then what I would do is highlight it like this and right click and go to consolidate. What it's going to do is it's going to take those MIDI clips and make it into one MIDI clip. And now I can click and drag that MIDI clip over to session view. And boom, I have a MIDI clip now that already has all of my MIDI assignments. So you can use session view and arrangement view together like that. I could have also saved this MIDI clip as a song. So I could click and drag over here and call it Open Up the Heavens MIDI cues, right? And I would probably save that in the folder where I have all my Open Up the Heavens wave files. So I've got a folder of my wave files, and then there's also a little clip here where it has my lyric cues. I don't know why I called it MIDI cues. It'd be lyric cues. Like that. Great question though. That's definitely a way you could use both to do that. George says, what if there isn't internet connection in church to connect ProPresenter to Ableton Live? Is there any other way to automate the lyrics? Okay, so you don't need an internet connection. What you need is a connection. So you don't have to actually be connected to the World Wide Web outside. You just need the computers connected to each other. So what you could do is create a network. Any computer can do this. You just go to your Wi-Fi and go to create network. And this will actually let you create what's called an ad hoc wireless network. And I could create a network for my MacBook Pro, and then the ProPresenter computer would connect to that network. And that's all you need. You don't actually need the internet at all. Good question. Changing arrangements on the fly would be good to hear about. I believe we talked about that with MIDI, jumping on arrangements here through arrangement view, and then also jumping through arrangements if you do it like this. Looks like our voting was 50-50, just about, which is what I kind of thought. Okay, David Andrews has a really, really good question, and I'm glad you brought this up, because I was going to show it to you earlier and I forgot. If you're in arrangement view, he says, so is it possible to start at different sections of the track? For example, if we're in a practice and we just want to start from the outro instead of doing it all from the beginning. How many times have you been in a rehearsal where like you want to maybe just practice the ending of a song, but you don't want to have to do the whole song again from the beginning? Yes, you can do that. Now, obviously in arrangement view, it's really easy. because you could just go to the chorus here at the end and click.
Chorus 2, 3, 4.
And you could take it from the chorus. But let's just say you're in session view. All right. Let me go and add a song here. Let's say you're using session view and you want to skip ahead. So I'm going to go bring in a song. We'll bring in Lion and the Lamb. This is a good trick. Bring in my cues. Let's bring in my tracks. Okay. Whoops. You have to drop. Oh boy. You have to drop those on an audio track, not a MIDI track. There we go. So what I do is I always double click on the cue file because that will give me a reference of where in the song we are. So what I would do is press play, and while it's playing, I'm going to click and drag at the top the bar counter, and it lets me fast forward through the song. So if I was like, hey, let's do that last chorus, I would bring it over here.
Instrumental 2, 3, 4. Chorus.
And there we go. I at least got us close. And now the band can start practicing from that point. So basically you have to press play, and while it's playing, you can drag the bar counter to where you want to go in the
2,
song.
3,
Great question.
4.
If you want it, Cameron says, if you wanted to run keyboard sounds through Ableton while running a track, how would you do that? Great question. I'm going to show you actually real quickly using Looptimus, okay? So we're going to use Looptimus, just pretend this is a piano, because Looptimus has a mode on it called pad mode where you can actually use Looptimus as a piano. So let's just move to pad mode. The next and previous buttons are going to let me choose the key of the song. So let's go to the key of C. And now buttons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are going to play the 1 chord of the key of C, the 2 chord, the 3 chord, and so forth. All right? I'm going to delete all my MIDI mappings. All right, now what we're going to do is here, and you would do the same thing with a keyboard. You're going to go to Create, Insert MIDI Track, and just call this Keyboard. You're going to enable it for recording. So you're going to turn on this little red record button, and that means that it's going to actually let you use your MIDI controller on this keyboard track. Now again, you need to go to Live Preferences, go to MIDI, and make sure that on your controller that you're using, you have track turned on. All right, so if you had a piano plugged in, make sure track is turned on. And now what you would do is just get a sound that you want. So you can go to Sounds or Keyboard Sounds. Here's like a, let's find a pad. Here's a pad. Let's just drag this pad onto the keyboard track. And now I can use Looptimus to play a sound. Now I would probably lower the octave here. It's kind of a weird sound. I don't think I would use that sound, but that's how you could use a keyboard to do that. Let's actually put a different pad sound on there. There we go. Let's lower the octave down. So this would all work exactly the same way if I was using like a piano. You just have to make sure that the record button is turned on. Great question. Michael says this has been very helpful. That's awesome. What makes Loop Community the best resource for tracks out of all the track resources online? There are a few track resources out there online. I think what I love about Loop Community is that it supports local worship leaders. So we sell tracks created by worship leaders from all over the world, and some of them sound just as good as the original, honestly. And when you buy it, you're actually supporting another worship leader, and I think that's cool. I think it's awesome for us to be able to actually support each other in that way. And so Loop Community, we have tons of tracks. There's a lot more tracks to choose from, which is also awesome. So you go to a song, and you can, like if you go to This Is Amazing Grace by Phil Wickham, you can buy the master track if you want, which are the original tracks. You could buy the premium tracks if you want, which are tracks that Loop Community makes, which are recorded professionally in our studio, and they're like almost half the price. Or you can buy community tracks, which are by worship leaders, and they're even cheaper. And some of them sound better than our tracks. So you can support worship leaders, but also our prices are a lot lower too. So, and we have a very large catalog of tons of tracks. And all of them, the other thing that I think is really cool is that they don't all sound exactly the same. You can kind of have different flavors of a track. So if you've done This Is Amazing Grace a million times at your church, hey, maybe next week you want to change it up and have a different sound. And so you can go to Loop Community and find a track for This Is Amazing Grace that's maybe a little different. So the tracks are a lot cheaper, that's for sure. And you have a lot more options. G35 King, do you ever use compression on tracks? Not really, but there are times when I've actually used compression on the master. So you can go to Audio Effects, and you can throw a compressor on the master, and this will compress, you know, everything that's coming out of the master. You don't want to crank it like that. There are times I've done that where you can actually put on like a mastering plugin to actually adjust the volume, or even I've done EQ before. It would adjust the EQ and the volume of all your tracks to kind of to master them so they all sound together. But that's a way you would do it if you wanted to get into that. Brandon says, can you talk on here, or do you have any videos on lighting cues for a lighting rig? It's a great question. So it works, I can't show you actually here because I don't have a lighting rig, but it works exactly like the ProPresenter one. So basically you would use a DMX control, right? And you would create a MIDI track the same way we did, and you use MIDI notes to control DMX. It's actually very simple. Usually it's like, I mean, every lighting rig is a little different, but it would usually just be next scene, next scene, next scene for lighting. And you would just have the same thing as ProPresenter, a MIDI note that's communicating to your lighting rig over a network usually, or sometimes depending on the lighting rig via USB or over Ethernet, and you could trigger your lighting presets. It's exactly like we did with ProPresenter. So we actually don't even need to go through that because it's so similar. Okay. I think that we answered a lot of the questions in here. I think I got everything. If I didn't get yours, you could probably type it again right now if you want. But we've gone through tons and tons of stuff. Tons of questions. So, you guys, I hope that this has been very helpful. We're going to, this will be, we covered so much. Honestly, like that is drinking from a fire hydrant. If I was, when I first learned Ableton Live, I don't think I had that much information thrown at me all at once. So that's a lot of information. And because of that, we're gonna make this video available to you. You'll be able to watch it again if you need to maybe fast forward, rewind, and watch something again so you can learn it. But it, like anything with practice, this will start to come really natural to you, and you'll be able to nail this stuff. It's a pretty simple software. It can look intimidating, but it's actually pretty simple. It's not very complicated. It can be very advanced if you want it to be advanced, or it can be very basic if you want it to be basic. So if you guys have any questions at all, you can email us at support@loopcommunity.com. We might hang out in the chat channel a little bit longer, and we could just comment back to your comments. But thank you guys for joining us. Sorry we got started a little late, but that is a crash course deep dive into Ableton Live. If you're interested in Looptimus or Track Rig, just go to loopcommunity.com and click on the gear icon at the very top of the website. And I am really happy that you guys are interested in Ableton Live, because this was probably something that when I learned it, it revolutionized how I led worship for the next 15 years. After I learned it, everything in my worship leading actually changed based on what I learned with Ableton Live. And honestly, I think what's really cool too is to see how people are using it. get in our Facebook group. If you're not in our Facebook group, join our Facebook group, because there's people that are talking about crazy stuff they're doing with Ableton Live, and you know, customizing it to do all sorts of stuff. So check that out. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for being a part of Loop Community. We could not do what we do without you. It's been awesome hanging out with you on this Wednesday morning. Thanks for giving me 2 hours of your time, and we'll talk soon. See you later.